Hey y'all, welcome to Most of It, where I'll talk about most things that I find interesting. Today, we will be covering the primarch Magnus the Red. So without further ado, let's get into this. Magnus began life by crashing into the planet Prospero. Magnus, unlike his other brothers, innately knew of his birth and remembers his infancy perfectly. He even spoke telepathically with the Emperor before meeting him in person. Prospero is a world of human psychers, which was fortunate as Magnus is also a psyker. Magnus was mentored by the scholar Amon, with him soon surpassing all on the planet. He soon also led a campaign against the planet's psychic parasite bug things, destroying them all. With the world safe, Magnus then turned his efforts to beautifying the planet, with Prospero becoming a paradise amongst the stars. When the Emperor arrived on Prospero, he and his son immediately embraced, as they already knew each other. Magnus was given command of his legion called the Thousand Sons. Unfortunately, due to the raw psychic potential in Magnus's gene seed, many of his sons suffered from a flesh change, being overcome by the power of the warp and becoming chaos spawn. In an effort to save his sons, and despite the warnings of the Emperor, Magnus gazed into the warp and found an entity who offered salvation. It cost Magnus his right eye, but for a time, the flesh change did cease. Throughout the Great Crusade, Magnus fought valiantly, forming close bonds with Horus, Lorgar, and Jagatai Khan. Favoring the arts of warpcraft far more than any of his brothers, Magnus began collecting spells and compiling them in a tome, which soon came to be called the Book of Magnus. As the crusade continued and Magnus came into contact with more warp creatures, his brothers Mortarion and Leman Russ became suspicious of them, and reported him to their father, who formed the Council of Nicaea. With it being ruled that only navigators would be allowed to use the warp, and that the librarians would be disbanded and reformed into their respective legions, effectively banning all sorcery. Needless to say, Magnus was displeased with this outcome, but remained loyal and still sought to protect his brother Lorgar from looking into the warp. Magnus soon returned to Prospero and began pursuing his experiments in secret, and upon looking into the warp, he saw a vision of Horus's future treachery and the legions that would assist him, except his own. Entering the mind of Horus while under a secret chaos ritual, Magnus attempted to sway his brother to remain loyal. With that failing, Magnus astrally projected himself to Terra in an attempt to warn his father. As his astral form moved through the warp, he found an entrance to the webway. As he attempted to break into it, he found he was not powerful enough, not knowing that this entrance was made and sealed by the Emperor. However, a voice came to Magnus and offered him the power to break through. Magnus, being overconfident, accepted the offer and broke through the webway, making his way to Terra. However, Magnus's actions allowed demons to pour into the webway, ruining the Emperor's future hope for humanity. Enraged, the Emperor did not allow Magnus to speak with him and banished him from his presence. He sent Leman Russ and the Space Wolves to arrest Magnus for violating the decree of Nicaea and bring him to Terra to be judged. However, Horus intercepted this command and instead commanded Leman to raise Prospero and kill Magnus. As they burned Prospero's libraries, Leman engaged Magnus in combat, breaking his back in the process. However, just as Russ was about to strike the final blow, Magnus and his sons all disappeared into the warp. There, Magnus found great power, giving in to the powers of chaos. However, Magnus's body had been destroyed in battle, causing it to shatter into many independent shards. Soon, however, Magnus's main and largest shard began to deteriorate, causing his son Ahriman to seek out the rest of them. After finding 4 of the 5 shards, Ahriman was able to reform his father, saving him and restoring most of his power. However, the 5th shard, which represented Magnus's goodness and nobility, was located on Terra. In an attempt to regain all of himself, Magnus joined Horus's forces and took part in the siege of Terra. During the siege, Magnus and Ahriman were able to infiltrate beneath the palace, meeting with Malcador the Sigillite, who revealed that Magnus's last shard had been used to create the first Grey Knight and thus was impossible to recover. Enraged, Magnus attacked Malcador and seemingly killed him. Moving to the throne room to kill the Emperor, Magnus ran into his brother Vulcan. As they engaged in battle, Magnus met psychically with the Emperor, who showed the future he had intended, with Magnus sitting on the golden throne powering the Imperial Webway. The Emperor showed his son the knowledge he could have, and told him that this future was not yet gone if Magnus would return to him at the head of a new legion which he had been prepared for. However, the Emperor stated that the 1,000 sons were beyond saving, and the flesh change would soon take them all, and they would need to be purged. Magnus refused to turn on his sons, and struck at the Emperor, who returned him to his battle with Vulcan, and while initially overwhelming his brother, he soon was beaten into submission by him. Just as Vulcan was about to strike down his traitorous brother, Magnus gave himself wholly to the chaos god Tzeentch, who revealed himself to be the mysterious chaos entity that had cured the flesh change and helped Magnus break the webway, also revealing that he was the cause of the flesh change. Magnus ascended to new demon form and was expelled from the palace by the Emperor's wards. Magnus soon emerged, now a winged and horned avatar of Tzeentch. He entered the webway and began enacting rituals to weaken the Emperor. Malcador dispatched Vulcan once again to kill his brother, and they soon came to blows, with Magnus disappearing in clouds of smoke. Rather than engaging Magnus directly, Vulcan instead attacked his rituals, causing Magnus to engage him directly. Magnus tried to kill his brother in various ways, including beheading him, draining all his blood, and turning his lungs to ash. However, Vulcan, being a perpetual, would simply heal and continue to attack his brother. Magnus soon became weakened by attrition and entered Vulcan's mind, attempting to explain his actions. Vulcan accepted none of it and scolded Magnus for becoming a slave to chaos. Back in the webway, Vulcan stood over Magnus and readied his final blow, with Magnus unleashing a spell undoing Vulcan at the genetic level, in a desperate final bid to kill him. However, as Vulcan crumbled away, his raised hammer fell upon Magnus, smashing his head and banishing him back into the warp. After Horus's death, Ahriman sought a way to undo the flesh change, which had been worsened by their alliance to Tzeentch. Ahriman's rubric technically worked, however it also turned most of the Legion's bodies to dust and trapped their souls within their armor. Magnus, enraged at what had happened to his sons, attacked Ahriman, who was saved by Tzeentch, as he found him entertaining. Magnus, now understanding that all this had been planned by the Chaos God, sent his remaining sentient sons out among the cosmos to discover the secrets of Tzeentch in an attempt to free them from him. Magnus, who had worked to educate his sons, was enraged to see them reduced to automatons, and just as Horus had done in the past, vowed to see the galaxy burn. Magnus, seeking revenge for Prospero, attacked the Space Wolves in what would be called the Battle of the Fang. In the closing years of the 41st millennium, he attacked the Space Wolves' homeworld of Fenris, but was banished by Logan Grimnar. After transporting the planet of sorcerers over Prospero, and in the process creating a massive warp rift, Magnus re-emerged at the head of his legion and assaulted the newly resurrected Rabute Gilliman. This battle ended on the moon, with Magnus being forced back into the webway by Gilliman and a squad of Sisters of Silence. Magnus later appeared on Prospero, where he attempted to summon a massive army of demons into real space. However, he was foiled by the Space Wolves. Following the opening of the Great Rift, Magnus had promised to succeed where his father had failed, elevating humanity to a fully psychic race. Remaining on Prospero, he seeks to give Tzeentch a foothold in real space, a task which he works on even now. So that's where the story stands for now. Magnus' story is one of arrogance and ignorance. He, at least in the beginning, was a decent guy, but through his assumptions of understanding everything, he doomed not only himself and his sons, but also all of humanity. The saying Magnus did everything wrong is very common in the 40K community, and I have a hard time disagreeing with it, honestly. He arrogantly ignored all instruction from the Emperor, and then acted like the Emperor betrayed him. The guy was just a mess. But just like Mortarion, he's got one of the best looking models in the game, so it pretty much evens out. If you want to learn more about Magnus the Red and his legion, I'd recommend reading the books 1,000 Suns, Magnus, the Red Master of Prospero, and the Crimson King. Well, that's all I got for today, y'all. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and comment down below what topics or characters you'd like to see me cover next. With all that said, see y'all later.